Hello my dear friends, this is your friend Dark Fox 3.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto was trained by Kushina and built a powerful bond with Hinata and Hanabi? Part 1. Let's start the fanfic. The man ran, he ran like his life depended on it, which was very much the case. Once again, he cursed himself for accepting this stupid mission, and he cursed his leader even more for giving it to him. He was running like all hell was on his heels, and that could be true considering that the parents of the twins he had under his arms were chasing after him. Abducting Hinata and Hanabi Hyuga, the 3-year-old twins of the clan head, was definitely not the best mission to pick. In fact, he was now seriously considering having his brain checked. He had been running like hell for almost a day now, with no occasion to stop, and he had almost made it to the border between hot water and frost. He was almost in his country. Once he reached lightning, he would be somewhat safe. Then, he saw and heard something that gave him a boost. A gigantic owl, hooting, came down from the sky, flying near the canopy. Charging chakra into his feet, he jumped always higher, finally shooting past the top of the trees, and the owl swept under him, allowing him to land on it. The summon quickly took to the air and, looking above his shoulder, the man could see Hiashi Hyuga's hateful glare, and his wife's tear-stained eyes. Then, he collapsed, panting hard. A hand landed on his shoulder, and he looked up to see the grinning face of a fellow Kumo shinobi. Good job. Raikage-sama will be pleased. The Hyuga abduction became a major sore point between Kumo and Konoha. While Konoha was ready to go to war, the fire daimyo felt that doing so for 2 mere children was too much, and as such forbade it. Konoha, and the Hyuga in particular, were not happy. But Konoha was not the only village to react. Fearing for their bloodlines, every village refused to accept Kumo dignitaries or guests in their walls, and while the Chunin exams were an exception, Kumo teams were always heavily monitored by Anbu. Kumo may have been one of the most powerful villages. Without allies, they were in a difficult position. The most notable consequence was seen in Water Country. Seeing what might be done to them, the bloodline clans were quick to tighten their bond with Kiri and were soon considered Kiri's most devoted defenders. When the Kagaya attacked, the clans answered with a swift and brutal counterattack, slaughtering the clan to the last. In this condition, when Yagura suddenly became more bloodthirsty and seemed to try to raise discontent towards bloodline users, he was met with heavy resistance, and it wasn't long before an all-out assault against him was organized. It was then discovered that he was manipulated. Quickly freed, Yagura joined the coup to chase their enemy, taking him down with him. Yagura, Yondaime Mizukage, went down in history as the leader of Kiri with the shortest reign, but as a hero nonetheless. Kiri didn't suffer through the bloodline purge and kept its place as one of the strongest villages, never realizing just how much Yagura's sacrifice changed the world. Following the incident, Konoha decided that, since they couldn't settle this affair on the battlefield, they would find ways to make Kumo pay. And so, each batch of Chunin hopefuls sent to the exams was trained to the bone. Only the most hardened and merciless teams were sent, with one mission: slaughter as many Kumo genin as possible. The Hyuga and the Hokage agreed to give a small bonus for each Kumo headband the Konoha fighters brought back. The number of Kumo representatives to survive the exams plummeted, and often reached absolute zero when a Hyuga was part of the exams. No matter what Kumo tried, Konoha always won. When they tried to send disguised Jonin or Chunin, the Konoha Jonin would immediately point out their rank and records, making Cloud look like fools. When they trained their students more, they found out that Konoha was already 3 steps ahead. And now seriously considered just sending the girls back, but it wasn't an option anymore. When they were 4, in an effort to ensure maximum durability, they had infused the girls with the chakra from Kyubi that was extracted from the Gold and Silver brothers, but the transfer went awry. The girls had screamed in pain throughout the whole ordeal, and was pretty much certain he saw them losing consciousness several times only to be woken up by the pain. But that wasn't the most worrying features. Hanabi and Hinata had developed fox ears and a bushy fox tail each. It was a relief that they never went berserk. But it didn't mean there weren't problems. Hinata and Hanabi were distrustful of Kumo in general and the male population in particular. They only tolerated two persons, Yugito Ni and Killer B. But even then, they were incredibly cautious around them, never completely letting their guard down. They had tried to brainwash them into thinking they were born in the Yatsuki clan, but it was an utter failure. What little memory they had of Konoha, they refused to let go. Even more worrying, they were easily the most dangerous ninja of their generation, dispatching all of their peers with 2 strikes top. And when it came to humiliation, they didn't stop at the academy. No, they targeted every part of the hierarchy. Paint bombs placed in the Jonin Lodge, entire squads of Chunin having their shampoos switched with hair dye, Anbu ambushed on their patrol routes and tied up in compromising positions, knockout gas placed in his own office. What frightened A was probably the fact that they always managed to show just how their prank could kill. Danzo looked upon the arena with interest. After the Hyuga abduction, Hiruzen had pleasantly surprised him, placing a reward for each Kumo genin killed, and because of that, he had decided to help, in his own way. So, he had built the Gauntlet, an underground arena where promising students trained and fought, using standard Anbu gear, porcelain animal masks and bandana on their hair to conceal their identity. No killing move was allowed and a cadre of med nin ensured that there wouldn't be casualties. At first, he thought it could help find some recruits for Root, but after seeing the records of the students leaving this arena, the first squad with one of his competitors to encounter opposition decimated their enemies in a matter of seconds. Those were genin from Iowa. Before the Rock Jonin could understand what happened, his students were dead and the Leaf genin had distracted him enough to allow their teacher to land a killing blow. In the span of 5 minutes, a genin squad 3 months out of the academy had decimated a squad of Iowa genin with a year of experience. From then on, Danzo had poured more and more resources into the Gauntlet. Even his Root were defeated in some instances. Of course, it was the youngest Root members that fought in the arena, but it was still impressive. And given the violent increase in quality seen in the Konoha genin, he realized the Gauntlet could prove more useful to Konoha than his Root could ever hope to be. From these facts, he drew the logical conclusion, sent his Root to rehabilitation, and dedicated himself fully to the Gauntlet. In the span of 3 years, it went from a miserable arena to a complete underground complex, with training grounds, armories, a jutsu library, its own hospital, and a number of safe houses. Konoha's very own underground fortress. Of course, Hiruzen, no matter how soft he was, couldn't be blind to this enormous change. One day, while Danzo was going over the new students at the academy, Hiruzen had confronted him. It had taken some convincing, but in the end the aged Cage had agreed to let it run. He did not regret it. One student of the Gauntlet could turn a mediocre squad into a war machine, and now the Gauntlet had been running for 9 years. Konoha was stronger than ever, and this year's batch was one of the most promising and frighteningly powerful he had seen. In the arena, smoldering craters covered the ground, 2 panting youths standing their ground. Taka and Kitsune, the 2 most powerful fighters to have ever entered the arena. Taka was powerful, precise, fast-learning and ruthlessly efficient. His talent in ninjutsu was absolutely frightening and he used his chikudo with uncanny dexterity. Kitsune was tireless, determined, stubborn enough to deny death itself, had chakra reserves bordering on Jonin, a talent in Fuinjutsu never seen since the Yondaime Hokage, and used his bladed staff with practiced ease. His stamina allowed him to force his way through the most difficult trainings, and while his chakra control wasn't the best, he could reach exceptional level of control on a technique through muscle memory alone. These 2 had a heated rivalry and always tried to outdo each other. One of them will become Hokage. Don't you think, old friend? Turning to the Sandaime Hokage, Danzo smirked. The aged Kage took his time before answering. We both know that only one of them is interested in the hat. Yes, but it is the one with the biggest problem. Do you have an idea on how to solve that? No, I don't really trust the Yamanaka with that, even Inoichi. Why? Can you imagine the kind of trouble it would cause if it was to get out? Danzo nodded, then rose and announced the end of the match. A draw, once again to the displeasure of the public and the gamblers in particular. At first Danzo wanted these fights to be held discreetly, but he had soon found out that a small public would worm its way into the darkness to witness the matches. What he couldn't stop, he decided to take advantage of, and soon the presence of public allowed him to have more funds for the gauntlet, increasing the quality of the equipment given to the students. Moving down the stairs, Danzo intercepted the two fighters just before they reached their assigned locker area. You have been exceptional, even on your last match. Excellent job. Keep the masks, you earned them. Both youth bowed. Keeping the masks given to them in the gauntlet was an honor, a mark of respect from Danzo. He didn't give those easily, but they had earned it. For 4 years, they had fought in the arena, besting every opponent sent their way except for each other. Tomorrow, they would be assigned their Jonin sensei, and Danzo was positive that they would pass, he had trained them well enough. As they left, they acknowledged each other with a nod before parting ways. Danzo was a proud man, and the last 9 years had done nothing to diminish that. The gauntlet had increased drastically the success rate of the true genin test, going from 33% to an impressive 80%, reaching 100% when you only considered teams with a member of the gauntlet. But he was no fool, he knew that these two's rivalry was fiercer than it should be. Should they find each other's real identity, Taka would feel insulted, to say the least. And now, they were bound to know so very soon, for they would be on the same team. Kitsune stalked the dark corridors of the gauntlet, peacefully making his way to the exit. For now, he still had control of their body, but soon Naruto would take over. He often felt dissatisfaction at their current predicament. Naruto was the main personality, and let's be honest, the poor guy didn't have a clue. He was loud, brash, obnoxious and wore orange. Orange, of all colors, he had to be enamored with orange, the color that only allows you to be camouflaged in the middle of lava. Not in a forest, not in an urban environment, no, lava only. It maddened him, but he had no way to change Naruto. If there was one thing he would give his brighter self, it was that he was stubborn. With a sigh, Kitsune thought back to how he was given life. During his life, Naruto had locked away everything that he considered bad. That included everything that increased the number or the intensity of the glares he received. As a result, he had locked away most of his anger, his ability to hold grudges, any murderous impulse, but also his smarts and talents in an effort to stop the teachers from hating him, and he had recently added anything remotely lust-related to the mix. In short, Kitsune was all that Naruto was not. When Naruto had entered the gauntlet, he had let loose of all those limitations, protected by the anonymity of the mask. But as soon as the mask fell, he would deny it was him, he would refuse to admit that he and the person with the mask were one and the same. With time, the mask had gained a personality on its own, giving birth to Kitsune, a darker version of himself. But for all his might, Kitsune felt incomplete, and strived to convince Naruto to merge and finally be whole, but he refused fiercely to acknowledge him as a part of his mind. Luckily, his fight against Mizuki had opened his eyes, and Naruto had taken steps towards the merging. Reaching the exit, Kitsune took one last breath, closed his red-slitted eyes, and removed the mask. Naruto exhaled slowly. He still wasn't used to the transition. Before, when he considered Kitsune another person, he just blacked out and found himself in some dreamlike state where he witnessed everything he did with dispassionate eyes, but since he admitted that Kitsune was a part of him, it was all clearer, and the transition felt more like moving back to the front. Moving back to the front didn't even begin to describe how it felt, but it was the closest he could think of. Shaking his thought out of his head, he quickly returned to his flat and changed back into his orange jumpsuit. Now that Kitsune had more influence on him, he was seriously considering discarding it and using those clothes Kitsune had purchased while having control of his body for a day. They seemed practical enough and were definitely badass looking. But he had other things to do tonight. Looking at the moon, he estimated the time to be around 10:30 at night. Good, the round in that part of the hospital had passed and wouldn't come back for a long time. He ran along the rooftops, jumping effortlessly across large streets and avenues. Reaching the hospital, he stuck to the wall using chakra, something he still wouldn't be able to do if he still denied Kitsune his real importance. Looking through the window, he was pleased to see that he had reached exactly the intended window. Using chakra to stick his hand to the glass, he made it slit a bit. Enough to place his hand inside and slid it completely open. He then slipped inside and closed the window. Taking his seat next to the head of the bed, he looked forlornly at the person in the bed. His mother, Kushina Uzumaki. From what the old man had told him, she had been in a coma for the last 13 years. He would come to see her twice a week, always telling her how life was going, often crying in her shoulder. Even though she never answered, it was still comforting. He sometimes wondered if she really was his mother and not some stranger the old man had picked up to escape his questions. After all, she didn't look that much like him, with her long flowing red hair. But even if it was a lie, he had someone to talk to, and she didn't seem to have any visit other than himself. Hey mom, sorry I didn't come last time, I kinda got tricked into stealing the forbidden scroll for a traitorous teacher. Of course, I kicked his shadow clones and its wonders. Meh, anyway, I managed to graduate, so I'm a ninja. Gonna get my team tomorrow. I got my last fight in the gauntlet, Taka again, that stuck-up prick really is a pain. Yeah, I finally realized that Kitsune's just a part of me, so I realized that those were my fights all along. Sigh, I wonder what team I'll get. Silence settled over the room. Naruto often wondered what his mother would think of him if she met him. Would she be proud? Ashamed? How would she feel knowing her son was a schizophrenic Jinchuriki? With yet another sigh, he thought back on the night he had earned the right to be a ninja and began to tell the tale to his comatose mother. You are the Kyubi. With a mighty heave, Mizuki threw the shuriken towards him, and Naruto could only watch in shock. Time seemed to slow down as the shuriken began to close the distance. I told you the Kyubi was sealed in our guts, I told you we were one and the same, and I told you to never trust this guy, but would you believe me? No, of course not. I guess I'll have to clean up this mess. Stay put, it's my fight. Just give me access to your moves, you should be able to since you say you're a part of me. Better yet, let's fight together. As one. Yeah, as one. His eyes turned purple and slitted as he dashed forward, passing by a shocked Iruka, and ducked under the shuriken. Shooting his arm up, he threw it through the hole of the shuriken and grabbed the weapon, stopping it in its track. Getting up, he looked calmly at Mizuki, assessing him like Kitsune had been taught to. Kitsune was right, you are a threat. I guess it's up to us to put you under control and deliver you to T&I. Kitsune. Why you are the Kitsune. Oh god. Fear made its way upon his face and he threw the other shuriken, far faster in hope of breaching the youth's guard, but it was for naught. Naruto simply jumped above the flying metal star and grabbed the circle in its middle, stopping it and taking control of it. Mizuki looked frightened, clearly searching an escape route, but that only caused Naruto to laugh harshly. I can outrun Anbu and feel their ambushes, do you really think that you can escape me? Mizuki tensed, and decided to try his chance up close. Taking a kunai in each hand, he charged him. As he closed in, he saw something that made him pause. Naruto was using chakra to spin the shuriken in his hands like two saw blades. This pause proved to be his undoing, as Naruto charged in and cut both his arms before he could react. Then, dropping the two spinning blades, he jumped and kicked him square in the chest, causing Mizuki to fly back and hit a tree, hard enough to lose consciousness. Naruto sighed wearily as he turned to look at Iruka. The scarred Chunin looked at him in awe, completely shocked at the performance of his worst student. Naruto, how did you do that? If you're so powerful, then why were you the dead last? And, are you really Kitsune? One of the best two fighters of the gauntlet. Alright, let's see. Sigh first, I used chakra to levitate the blades in my hand and put them in movement. Second and third at the same time, let's say that, Kitsune is kind of a second personality. He told me about that for a long time but I never listened. He's always pestering me about merging, whatever that is. Anyway, while I still denied that he was part of me, I couldn't use his skills, but now I have some access to it. Anbu suddenly fell from the trees, surrounding them. Naruto sighed tiredly. It was hell to explain everything to them, but in the end I managed to escape this mess scot-free. So here I am, with a headband, and wondering just who the hell my teammates will be. I just hope Sasuke won't be one of them, he's a real pain. And I'm beginning to wonder if Sakura's as awesome as I thought. After all, I was basically a dunce before, or maybe I'm still one, I'll have to see. He said softly. I'll see you soon, Mom. Gotta go and grab some shut-eye. With that, he went to the window, opened it and slipped outside before closing behind him and running to his apartment. Naruto walked into the classroom in utter silence. He still had his orange jumpsuit but felt slightly less comfortable wearing it, so he tied the jacket around his waist. He didn't really felt like drawing attention today, so he just walked up the stairs to take a seat in the back of the class. However, life is a bitch, so someone noticed him, and that someone happened to be Sasuke. Dobi, this is for those that graduated. Sasuke didn't particularly dislike the blonde Dobi, it was just that, if he was mean to him he would get pointers from experienced ninja and some equipments from some stores, so it became a habit. Besides, the blonde was so clueless that it actually was fun. But today it was different. Naruto simply looked at him dispassionately before resuming his journey up the stairs, as if he wasn't worth his time. This infuriated him, of course. Sasuke hated being ignored, but he kept control of his anger. He wouldn't let the Dobi have any form of superiority over him. However, his fangirls weren't about to let that pass and began yelling at Naruto for being disrespectful to Sasuke, and Sakura and Ino entered the class just at this very moment. Of course, Sakura, being the dedicated Sasuke worshipper she was, immediately went to Naruto, demanding that he apologized and answered Sasuke's question, ready to deliver bodily harm should he refuse. The thing is, it didn't go as planned. Since Naruto still hadn't answered, she, quite gleefully, decided to hit him, but as she sloppily swung her arm at him, he simply sidestepped the attack before driving a fist into her belly. The whole class went silent, looking in shock at them. They all knew that Naruto had a crush on Sakura, yet here they were, with his fist buried in her midsection being the only thing keeping her standing. Sakura, first and last warning. You try to hit me, I hit you. You actually hit me, I tear you a new one. Clear. His voice was casual, like he was talking about the weather and not about beating up his supposed crush. He removed his fist from Sakura's guts, letting her fall on her knees. He looked around the class, seeing that all eyes were on him. Not wanting to bother with an explanation, he simply jabbed his thumb at his forehead, the nail lightly clicking against the metal of his headband. Then, he simply walked back to his seat and resumed his looking into space. Sakura, thoroughly shocked, stood up shakily and walked down the stairs of the classroom, looking weakly at the seat next to Sasuke, only to see it occupied by an uneasy Ino. Defeated, she settled for the closest seat at her disposal. When Iruka entered the classroom, he was shocked at the eerie silence that reigned in it. Frowning slightly, he made his way to Shino and asked the boy about what happened. The Aburame heir whispered a quick explanation that just added to Iruka's shock before the teacher thanked him and made his way to the front of the class. Clearing his throat, he gained the attention of the class, stopping most of them from sending worried glances towards Naruto. He gave a little speech about the life they were about to enter, how he knew they would be splendid shinobi and how much faith he had in them. Meanwhile, Naruto was scanning the class, looking for other pupils of the gauntlet. Toshi is probably Tora, Tiger, Tenzo would be Toru, Mantis, Shizuka is probably Hato, Dove, and I'd say Akito is Kuma, Bear. And of course, there is Sasuke, the ever so arrogant Taka, Hawk. He was still troubled by his reaction to Sakura's attempt at violence. He knew it couldn't be reflexes alone, he had managed to suppress them before, when he was still in denial, but this time, he hadn't simply blocked or evaded the punch, he had retaliated. It was you, am I right? For your own good. That girl's a complete and utter bitch, and you'll see it in time. And honestly, can you tell me it didn't feel good? Hey, guess not. Admit it, your dislike for Sakura was one of the first things you pushed to the merging. Best way to make sure you stop getting is cranial trauma by asking her out. Cranial trauma? You serious? And where do you think all those headaches were coming from? That bitch hits us like we're some concrete wall. Focusing back on Iruka's voice, Naruto heard that he had begun announcing the teams and was currently at Team 6. Next, Team 7 will be composed of Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura. A loud cheer and equally loud whine of displeasure was heard as Ino and Sakura, last two girls without teams, expressed their opinion on the matter. Silence. Good. Now, as I was saying, Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura and Uzumaki Naruto. Sakura opened her mouth to protest, but the sound of shattering concrete stopped her. Everyone turned to the back of the class to see that Naruto had punched the wall, and left a crater in it. Removing his hand, Naruto looked at the blood on his knuckles, visibly annoyed. With a sigh, he sat back down and motioned to Iruka to go on, completely ignoring the slightly quivering Sakura. All right, Team 8 will be Aburame Shino, Yuzuka Kiba and Kurama Yakumo. Naruto perked up a bit. He knew a bit about Yakumo, she was part of the Kurama clan, a clan of powerful genjutsu users. From what he Kitsune knew, the Kurama were currently having trouble keeping their bloodline active with Yakumo being its last bearer, and many hushed whispers talked about the disappearance of the clan. But the Kurama were a proud lot, they refused to be dismissed as simply a dying clan, and many hopes were placed on Yakumo, the heiress of the clan. And finally, Team 10 will be Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji and Yamanaka Ino. Of course, the golden boar groaned while Sakura taunted her, but that didn't interest Naruto in the slightest. Iruka then announced a prolonged lunch break and advised them to get to know better their teammates and think of ways to impress their teachers. Of course, Sasuke stalked out of the room to eat alone, and Naruto honestly didn't give a damn, he simply watched people leave the classroom, and as soon as he was alone with Iruka, took out a scroll, unrolled it and unsealed a lunch. Iruka looked at him in surprise, not really expecting this to happen. Naruto, since when do you seal your lunch? And since when do you eat something other than ramen? Indeed, it was a bowl of rice with slices of fish that was unsealed, along with a pair of chopsticks, so Naruto answered while unsealing the smaller bowl of sauce. Kitsune prepared that, a while back, it was just in stasis in the scroll. Anyway, I'm going to use those a lot more from now on. It will probably cause a shock to everyone, but I don't give a shit. You don't eat with your team. If you can call it that. Sakura hates my guts for no apparent reason, and Sasuke is just Taka from the gauntlet, so it'll be hell. I'll try to negotiate a truce, but I'm not sure he'll accept. With that, Naruto began to dig into his bowl. The lunch break was over and the genin had gathered in the classroom, organizing themselves by teams. Naruto was happy to let the seat next to Sasuke to Sakura and be done with it. As long as he didn't talk to her, he had relative peace. Iruka came into the classroom accompanied by Danzo Shimura. Naruto thought back to the conversation they had during lunch. Naruto was calmly eating his food. Iruka had left the room to go grab something to eat and had left him alone, something that was perfectly fine by him. The door slid open suddenly, causing Naruto to raise his gaze. In the doorway stood Danzo Shimura. The old man slowly made his way to the seat next to him and gave him an amiable smile. Naruto-kun, I need to talk to Kitsune, could you please tell him to come? He's listening. Danzo narrowed his eyes at him. So, the merging has begun. Yup. So, what's the stuff you wanna talk about, Danzo-sama? As you know, the Hyuga are the only clan to allow their member to fight in the gauntlet. We need to change that. U-class has a high proportion of clan heirs, so if we prove that fighters from the gauntlet can surpass the best the clans have to offer, they will enroll their children into the gauntlet and Konoha will be strengthened. It will be done. And don't worry, when you get a Hokage made in gauntlet, you'll be sure to have an increase in frequentation. Said Naruto, absolutely serious. Danzo smirked slightly. I have no doubt we will. Alright class, settle down. Danzo-sama here has some things to tell you all. Thank you Iruka-san. Good day children. I hope you are having a good day. It is, after all, the beginning of a new life for you. You are now ninja of the leaf, and all have new responsibilities, some more than others. You are now adults and will be treated as such. You will have to become independent, both in your training and your life. This class will be especially watched, for the future leaders of no less than 5 of our clans are among you, and one of you may very well establish his own clan. At this point, Danzo's gaze fell on Naruto, and while it seemed casual, Naruto knew it was anything but that. Silently, he mouthed, "Re-establish," causing Danzo to smile slightly. Enormous responsibilities are on your shoulders, some of you will even have to manage your clan's whole possessions. The village has high expectations for all of you and will invest a lot of money and time into making you fine shinobi. You must repay it with your loyalty and sweat. Do this, and you will have a safe place where you will be able to raise your family. With a last sweeping gaze and a nod, Danzo stepped back. Thank you Danzo-sama, said Iruka. Now, your Jonin-sensei should arrive soon. And indeed, he had barely closed his mouth that the door opened to reveal a purple, long-haired Jonin in standard outfit with a katana strapped to her back. Team 5, we're going. As the members of the team rose and left, Naruto looked at who was leaving. As they passed near him, he spoke. Good luck Kuma. Everyone in the room stopped and looked at him in surprise, but not as much as the members of the gauntlet. Akito then managed to get a hold of himself, and bowed. Thank you Kitsune-senpai. Of course, now everyone in the room that didn't know of the gauntlet was confused beyond reason. Sakura, who had been about to make a snarky remark about Naruto, could only watch in surprise as Team 5 left the room while Sasuke looked intently at Naruto. 3 more teams left the room, and Naruto wished good luck to Hato and Tora. Then, the door opened and in walked one of Konoha's most powerful Jonin, Hitaki Kakashi. He was rumored to have been in a deep depression for years, but it seemed being a teacher had done wonders for him. Team 7. Meet me on the roof in 5. He disappeared in a swirl of leaves and Naruto simply stood up and made his way for the door. As he was about to exit, he heard Toru's voice. Kitsune-senpai, good luck. Naruto turned his head and smiled at him. Thanks. You too Toru. Then he exited the room and made his way to the roof, feeling Sakura and Sasuke following him, the latter fuming silently about being in the rear. When they reached the balcony on the roof, they took their seats, with both boys at an extremity again. Kakashi was practically beaming at them. He seemed to be in an extremely good mood today. Welcome my cute little genin, he said, getting a grunt out of Sasuke, a protest out of Sakura, and a loud laugh out of Naruto. Ha! I like that one. Think you could use it all the time, sensei? It sure would make the D ranks a bit less dull. Kakashi I smiled. Maybe Naruto, maybe, it will depend on how good you do. Now, let's reassure you all, I know what I'm doing, I've had 3 teams already, they all made Chunin within a year and my first team even reached Jonin. One of them is even taking on students from your class, so don't worry, you're in good hands. Now, let's get to know each other, shall we? He said with his eternal eye smile. I'll go first. I am Hatake Kakashi, Jonin of Konoha. I like many things, but mostly having friends and my beloved Ika Ika. I dislike egoistical persons and I absolutely loathe traitors. He said the last part completely seriously, looking at them dead in the eyes. Naruto noticed he spent a bit more time on him and felt compelled to answer. Kakashi-sensei, if you're wondering if I'll ever turn psycho, the answer is no, I'm far past the point of madness. That got all those around him to look at him curiously, wondering what he meant. Naruto then motioned to him to go on. All right, we'll talk about that later. As I is saying, I loathe traitors. My dream is, currently, to make you 3 some wonderful ninja, just like my 3 other teams. My hobbies are mostly reading. Alright, your turn, sunshine. He said, I smiling to Sasuke and causing the only blonde present to smile. I am Uchiha Sasuke. I don't like many things, and I dislike a lot. I don't have any hobby. I don't have a dream, more of an ambition, to kill a certain man. Kakashi frowned slightly. This would certainly make things more complex. Alright, now your turn, Bubblegum. Sakura twitched at the nickname but answered nonetheless. I am Haruno Sakura. She blushed while looking at Sasuke, who pointedly ignored her. My hobbies are. Once again, she looked at Sasuke, giggling a bit this time. My dream is. Another gaze toward Sasuke, this time with a hopeful smile and a slightly larger blush. And I hate Ino Pig and Naruto. That was LAAAAAAME. Sakura turned to Naruto, enraged, but the blonde kept talking. You do realize you admitted you have absolutely no motivation. You're here just to get in Sasuke's pants and, sorry to be blunt, but I have better chances at this than you do, and he's straight, that's saying something. In case you didn't realize, the Uchiha are a clan of warriors. If you wanna become a pampered housewife, you should have set your sights on a civilian. What the hell do you know, good orphan? Smooth Sakura, real smooth. In case you didn't notice, Sasuke's an orphan too. Casting a brief glance to Sasuke's twitching eyebrow, Sakura wisely decided to shut up. Alright, my turn, yes. Kakashi nodded. Right. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, fuinjutsu, old man Hokage, and I guess I'll have to expand the list when I discover new things. I dislike people who judge others or blame them for things out of their control. My hobbies would be calligraphy, getting payback through pranks and a bit of meditation from time to time. I've got 2 big dreams. First, becoming Hokage. His boisterous, joyful tone suddenly subsided, a more thoughtful and almost melancholic tone taking its place. My second dream is, one day, to go to Whirlpool and pay my respects to my ancestors. Alright, you're an interesting bunch. We'll meet tomorrow at 9 o'clock at Training Ground 3 to take a little test. What you passed was a pre-test, of sorts. Now we're going to see if you really have what it takes to be a shinobi of Konoha. Don't worry, the success rate is good, you'll probably pass. He said with an eye smile. We'll see, answered Naruto, suddenly serious again. Taka, let's face it, we hate each other, but we're gonna be on the same team, so let's make a truce. What do you have in mind? We work and train together, but we don't interact more than that. So, I'm in. Kakashi nodded appreciatively, satisfied to see that they would be willing to set their differences aside to work together. However, when he looked at Sakura's revolted face, he knew she would be a handful, even though right now she was keeping her mouth shut. Alright, Sasuke, I don't need you anymore, you can go. Sakura, could you wait down the stairs please? I'll have a talk with Naruto and I'd like to talk to you afterwards. Alright sensei. The Uchiha had already left with a burst of speed, leaving the pink-haired one to slowly walk down the stairs in silence, dejected that her crush didn't want to talk to her. Okay, Naruto, what was that comment about being far past madness? You know of Kitsune of the Gauntlet, right? Yes, I know of your identity in the Gauntlet. More like second personality, said Naruto, causing Kakashi's eyes to widen in shock. Wanna meet him? He's a bit on the snarky side, but he's an okay guy. Naruto, are you telling me that you are talking to a Kitsune in your head? Don't worry, he's not the fox. Let me show you. Crossing his fingers, he summoned a shadow clone on the bench next to him. The clone opened his eyes to reveal that they were red and slitted, causing Kakashi to tense. Nice trick, good idea. So, here's our teach, huh? Well hi, I'm Kitsune, Naruto's darkest side so to say. And don't worry, I'm 100% human-made, Fluffy can attest to that. Fluffy. Yup. No end of fun calling that wet fox Fluffy. Kitsune then proceeded to explain his birth to a dumbfounded Kakashi. And that's about it. Since we're on the way to merging, we can say we're past madness, don't you think? Well, so it seems. Though I admit I feel a bit queasy about a schizophrenic Jinchuriki. Yeah, I know. Anyway, was there anything else you wanted to talk about? Yes, do you really want me to keep using cute little genin? Naruto and Kitsune looked at each other before grinning maniacally. Heck yes, they said as one. Have you seen the look on their faces? It was hilarious. Continued Naruto. Okay, I'll see about that, you can go now. Tell Sakura to get up here on your way down. Sure thing. Kitsune dispelled and Naruto left for his apartment, signaling to Sakura to climb back up as he passed her. The pinket's lips drew a thin line, obviously not too very pleased about being ordered by the perceived Dobi. As she reached the balcony once again, she sat in front of her teacher. Alright Sakura, I think we have a lot of things to talk about. First and foremost, you will have to dampen your dislike of Naruto if we are to work together. But why? He's a complete loser who will only pull Sasuke-kun and I down. He shouldn't even be a ninja. He has no talent whatsoever, he is loud and obnoxious, he wears orange, and he is just plain dumb. I'm not the only one to think that, everyone does. Oh boy, it will be a pain. Sigh, alright, here we go. Naruto isn't a loser, as you so kindly put it, and you will soon discover just how wrong you are. You will also see very soon that he isn't as weak as you think he is. A recent, traumatic event caused his potential to unlock in full. You noticed he addressed Sasuke as Taka, correct? That is because they fought in an underground complex that train willing academy students. Naruto is Kitsune, and Sasuke is Taka. They are both the strongest students to have come out of there, so don't worry about him pulling you down, more probably, he will pull you up. Kakashi ignored the disbelieving look his female student was giving him and went on. Now, Hokage-sama himself think Naruto should be a ninja, do you think you know better than him? Kakashi left a pause, enjoying slightly seeing his student squirm. I thought so. As for the loud part, you must admit you weren't exactly the most discreet with your voice. And lastly, think by yourself. Have you tried to get to know him before passing judgment? I don't need to. I heard enough about him. So you blindly trust what others say and never try to see for yourself. And you want to be a ninja? If such is the case, go back to the academy, even better, drop out of the program completely. Ninja must think by themselves. People you consider trustworthy may be biased on a topic and try to pass that on to you. HMPH, then why is the entire village saying this? Not the entire village. Besides, number isn't a guarantee. How many of these people know him? The answer is, none. Now, I will give you a chance, but if your behavior jeopardizes the team, I will have to request a replacement. Sakura nodded her head slowly, not really wanting to lose her spot on Sasuke's team. With that, Kakashi dismissed her and returned to his apartment. When he finally reached his apartment, and unceremoniously collapsed on the couch. Oh man, that's probably going to be both my worst and my best team. Yugito Ni was a strong woman. She was one of the two strongest Kumo Jonin to ever be, only surpassed by Killer Bee and the Raikage, and she was without a doubt the strongest kunoichi in the history of Kumo, and that was without the Nibi. With her lifelong partner, she was a powerhouse, surpassing even in terms of raw chakra output and firepower. But there were still things that made her wish she became a pastry cook like she wanted to be when she was a kitten. A good example of such things would be the pranks pulled by the infernal duo, Kumo's very own night vixens, as they extravagantly decided to name themselves, and as their legal guardian, she was faced with them far more often than she'd like. With a sigh, she stopped in front of Mabui. What did they do this time? Paint bombed another shop? Replaced ration bars with concentrated hot pepper? Or did they hit a gas bomb in A's office, again? None of these. Go in, he'll explain. With another heavy sigh, Yugito stepped into the room, bowed to her leader and took her seat next to her charges. They both wore identical clothing, meaning black sandals, black pants, black short-sleeved shirts and cream-colored long vests on top of it. The main difference between the Foxy twins was the hair. Hanabi's hair was kept into a Heim cut, having a ponytail extending out of the back, while Hinata's was just long flowing hair, both reaching their mid-back. They looked at A and Yugito innocently, but the swishing of their tails left no doubt. They were thrilled. They had once again executed some prank, and a big one it seemed. Alright, Raikage-sama, what did they do this time? They littered the Anbu patrol routes with traps. They disabled no less than a quarter of the Anbu Corp before we understood what happened. We had a breach of security of major importance for 4 hours last night. And if that wasn't enough, they then disrobed the knocked out Anbu and tied them up in compromising positions and left them in some of the most frequented streets of the village. Yugito's first impulse was to bang her head on a wall. She looked over them, and saw that the sisters looked indeed pleased with themselves. All right, young ladies, what do you have to say for yourselves? They had it coming, said Hinata. Yeah, they were trying to peep on us in our bathroom, added Hanabi. So we had to get revenge by disabling a quarter of our Anbu forces. Not our fault if they're amateurs, answered Hanabi. Yes, if they worked correctly they would have seen the traps. They left their guard down inside the village and they paid for it. Yugito could see that A was struggling to stop himself from slamming his head on his desk and burst into tears. Why are you acting like that? This behavior isn't worthy of members of the Yatsuki clan. A quickly realized that tiredness had caused him to say the old automated answer that always infuriated them. Their faces turned into a snarl as anger took hold of them. We are not members of the Yatsuki clan, we are Hyuga. You and your clan are those responsible for our abduction. We are not part of your clan, and never will be, yelled Hanabi. My sister is correct, supplied Hinata in a cold tone. We are Hyuga, and always will be. The Byakugan is proof of that. A tensed. He hated to be reminded of his mistake, and the sisters made sure to force him to face it at every occasion they got. And they made sure to have many such occasions. With a sigh, A slumped in his chair. And what would you have me do? Send you back to Konoha? Remember that the Kyuubi killed many of their own. Anything Fox related will be viewed with distrust at best, and there is a high probability that the Hyuga would brand you with that seal they used to keep the branch family in line. We'd choose limited servitude and a chance at life over a future of rapes and forced pregnancies. Answered Hanabi bluntly. A cringed as Yugito sent a glare his way. Listen, I realize it was a huge mistake, but you are now genin of Kumo, and I can't correct my mistakes if you keep acting like that. Both sisters looked at him intently now, their full attention on him, along with a very curious Yugito who wondered what her leader had in mind. I can't say too much, just know that if your team acts exemplarily enough, you'll be able to choose who you marry and where you and your children will live. Hanabi and Hinata looked at each other and nodded before turning back to the mountain of a man. Very well, we will stop causing trouble, said Hinata softly. At least for now. May we retire please? The last day of the academy was taxing. The smile on her face made a groan. Kami-sama help me. They made one last prank. They will kill me with paperwork alone. Yes, go, and leave me to deal with the mountain of paperwork you caused once again. Satisfied grins made their way to the sisters' faces as they rose from their seats and left the room, sauntering happily toward the exit. Yugito watched them leave before turning toward her superior. If I may, what exactly do you plan? Get them to Chunin as fast as possible and shove them into Konoha's hands with a long-lasting diplomatic mission. They cause far too much havoc in Kumo. Why not tell them directly? If they knew just how much I want to send them back to the leaf, they'd make my life an even bigger hell, and I can live without that. Yugito nodded in understanding before rising to her feet, bowing and leaving to return to her house. Hinata and Hanabi got out of the bathroom together after cleaning themselves, both wearing white bathrobes and leaving their hair free. Their final prank had taken a long time to set up, especially given its specifications. They wanted a prank that wouldn't activate for at least 3 months, and one that couldn't be traced back to them. It had been hard, but they had managed it. They had found an insect that had a very interesting particularity. It was a kind of fly with a hatching time of up to 4 months depending on the conditions, and the interesting thing was that it looked a hell lot like a type of thunder wasp that was known for its deadly venom. It was guaranteed to cause chaos at the academy, and since these things were notoriously impossible to control, no one could blame them. An interesting bonus was that the old ape that was the rakage would be on the lookout for the prank, and that would stress him to no end. Hinata chuckled softly, causing her sister to raise her eyebrow quizzically. Sister, how do you think the males of this village would react if they knew we are taking our showers together? Hanabi smiled amusedly. They'd probably try even harder to find a way in there and try to join us. Good thing they don't know about it. Yes, it is good indeed. Now, let us go to bed, some rest will do us a world of good. Yeah, let's sleep. They shed their bathrobes, Hanabi enjoying some moments of vanity as she looked at her body in the mirror. Then they picked their nightwear, large sweatpants and equally large shirts, before slipping together in their bed. There, they held onto each other, like they did for years, then lightly brushed their lips together. Not a full kiss, but enough to tell themselves their first kiss wasn't stolen if such a thing was to happen. I hope we'll see Dream-kun tonight too, said Hanabi, somewhat childishly. Me too, sister, me too, answered Hinata, with longing in her voice. Then, as the sun set, they fell asleep in each other's arms, wishing for a better life. See, come on girls, mom just left. Another reason to go on Dream-kun, who knows when she'll come back. Yes, we must make the most of it. Giggle, don't you like it? That's not the problem. It's private. So you do like it. I think I'll use my mouth now. What? What are you damn? I think Dream-kun likes it, sister. Come on Dream-kun, don't they look nice? You can lick them, you know. Oh to hell. Yes, that's it Dream-kun, you're finally getting into it. You sure taste good. Thank you Dream-kun. Ooh, you do know how to use your tongue, nah. So does your sis. Grunt shit, I'm gonna, gulp yummy. Now, the main dish. Oh heck yeah. Now foxy ladies, who's goin' first? Naruto woke up with a start. What the hell was that dream? They never went so far before. Well, looks like puberty hit. With a sigh, Naruto rose to his feet before looking down and noting that his not so little anymore friend was standing at attention. With a sigh, he went to take care of his morning routine, hoping to put his mind on something else. These two fox girls had begun to appear in his dreams when he was 6 for apparently no reason. For his mother, he could understand, she had appeared after his first visit to her with the old man, on his 8th birthday, but for those girls he had absolutely no explanation. Yo Kitsune, any idea as for why I have pervy dreams about fox girls? Nope, but I'm definitely keeping that memory where I can reach it. Best dream ever. You'll share. We're the same guy, sharing with yourself isn't really possible, but the memory will be at your disposal. Sweet. Finishing his routine, Naruto set out for the training ground. He had decided to let go of the orange pants, choosing black pants instead, but keeping his jacket tied around his waist. Walking slowly towards the training grounds, he noticed the way people were looking at him, disbelief and hatred. They couldn't believe he had been made a ninja, they felt outraged that such a thing was allowed. Not that he cared anyway. One particularly stupid civilian that enjoyed bullying him decided to step into his path, blocking his way. Naruto eyed him lazily and talked before the idiot had the chance to open his mouth, effectively wiping the smug smirk from the man's face. You do realize I can have you arrested for interfering with shinobi affair, right? Yes, I can do it. Any civilian interfering with shinobi business for no good reason is automatically suspected of treason and sent over to T&I. You sure you wanna spend 2 hours with Mitarashi Anko just for the thrill of bothering me a bit? The man seemed to waver, shock written all over his face. Naruto then sidestepped him and went on his merry way, leaving all the passerby shocked. He quickly reached the training ground and found his teacher and male teammate engaged in a heated argument, and he honestly didn't give a damn. Finally, Kakashi abandoned, at least for now, whatever they fought over and after noticing him, made his way over to him. Yup sensei, I'm sorry, but it seems you will fail because of your teammates. Sakura hates your guts for no good reason and Sasuke is a loner without even the smallest notion about teamwork. Sasuke, still in hearing range, growled. He hated the concept that he, the prodigy, would be holding back the dobi. It was ridiculous, and insulting. Ma, don't be so negative sensei. Sasuke and I got an arrangement yesterday, I know he'll abide by the terms, and if he is willing enough to work as a team, Sakura will follow like a good lil puppy. Naruto, I've seen other teams like that. They always end up bad. All the more reason to become Chunin as fast as possible, that way we won't have to endure each other's presence longer than necessary. Kakashi nodded skeptically, making his doubts about the future of the team clearly known. Sakura chose just that moment to appear, and of course immediately ran to Sasuke's side and began acting like they were almost a couple, with Sasuke passionately ignoring her. With yet another sigh, Kakashi clapped his hands once, gaining their attention. Alright, time to begin the test. He got out an alarm clock and put it on top of a small log. It's set to ring at noon, so you have 3 hours to try and impress me. Here are the rules. If you impress me enough, I pass you individually. If you fail to impress me, you go back to the academy. He then got out 2 little bells. These babies here are free passes. You manage to get a bell, you can pass, even if you didn't impress me. Sakura was, of course, certain she wouldn't need the bells and silently celebrating the fact that Naruto would be sent back to the academy. Sasuke and Naruto looked at each other. The Uchiha raised an eyebrow, asking silently if the Uzumaki thought there was something fishy too. Naruto nodded slightly. Kakashi saw the exchange and wondered if maybe he was wrong. Now, come at me with the intent to kill, You won't manage anything otherwise. But, sensei, we could hurt you, said Sakura. Sasuke sighed in exasperation, wondering why he had been cursed with her as a teammate. The dobi, he could do, he was Kitsune, so he was strong, even if he had trouble accepting it, but Sakura. Annoying and weak. Naruto didn't even react. Now, Sakura, I know what I'm doing, I'm the veteran here, right? Now, begin. The three genin disappeared in the trees, two faster than the last, and began to observe. Sasuke and Naruto, trained as they were, had decided to stick together and see if they could find exactly what was bothering them with this test. Your thoughts, Taka? Seems strange. Danzo-sama said genin teams always had 3 genin and a teacher, so why would he create the possibility to have only 1 or 2 students? He expects us to pass, but not Sakura. I think he wants to see if we'll go out of our way to help a teammate, even if she's useless. After all, that's Konoha's creed. Comrades gotta work together no matter their strength. So I guess that means we'll have to get her a bell. Or get her to work with us. That's probably a test on teamwork or something. You shouldn't have too much trouble getting her to work with ya, since she's all over you and all. I give her to you anytime. No thanks, I like my girls a lot foxier. Naruto ignored Sasuke's questioning gaze and began to smell the air slightly, quickly locating his teammate's smell thanks to the shampoo. Following the smell with Sasuke tagging along, they quickly reached Sakura. Yo Pinky, don't scream. Sakura spun on her side while taking a kunai, pointing it at Naruto's voice, only to see him looking amusedly at her with an annoyed Sasuke at his side. Okay. Long story short, this is a test of teamwork, so if we wanna pass, we gotta work together. So, you wanna get a bell or what? Why should I believe you, loser? I'm sure you want to pass using Sasuke-kun's and my talent. Right, Sasuke-kun? The last part was said with an enamored gaze towards the Uchiha, causing him to raise a hand to massage his right temple. Sakura. How many genin teams have only 2 genin? Asked Sasuke in a clearly exasperated tone. Sakura opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came to her mind, and she then realized that, indeed, all genin teams had 3 genin, and she then realized just what her teammates had already deduced. He wants to see if we'll put our differences aside and work together. Naruto smiled. Ah, the kunoichi is showing, good. So, do we charge in together and just show him we're working together, or do we go for a complete show? Complete show. Alright, so we keep him busy and Sakura lays traps. Sasuke nodded, thus gaining Sakura's undivided support to the plan. Alright Pinky, choose your zone, lay your traps, and signal us when you're ready, K. Sakura nodded and began looking for a good zone to booby trap. Kakashi was surprised. It was already an hour and his students had yet to show, something that really surprised him. His previous teams had already attacked, most of the time to show that they worked together and had understood the goal of the test, but not this time. He had no doubts that both Naruto and Sasuke had understood the test, but by now they should have. A hail of shuriken interrupted his thoughts and his reading, forcing him to jump out of the way and stash his book away. His feet had barely touched ground that he jumped again, avoiding a second volley of metal stars. Backflipping out of the way, he landed on his feet with a kunai in each hand. In front of him were Naruto with his bladed staff and Sasuke with his chikudo. His brow furrowed, but before he could talk, Sasuke dashed forward, slashing low and forcing him to block his blade with one of his own. Quickly, his second kunai went up, stopping Naruto's attack. Naruto, using his kunai and his staff as support, slammed his foot into his cheek just as Sasuke's right foot left the ground to lodge itself into his stomach. The combined impact threw the Jonin towards the trees. Skidding to a halt, Kakashi shook the surprise out of his system and quickly began to counter his opponent's strikes. Sasuke's form was flawless. He only needed experience and speed to become one of the most dangerous blade users of the leaf. As for Naruto, there was absolutely no form at all. The only constant seemed to be movement. There was no pattern, no way to predict his next strike, no style, or at least none he knew of, and it was frighteningly efficient. Without really noticing it, Kakashi was slowly pushed back towards the trees. Suddenly, a trap was triggered, sending a hail of kunai his way, forcing him to jump out of the way, and directly into another trap. For 10 good minutes, he had to avoid traps, and while they were basic, it wasn't that easy with 2 of his students keeping him occupied. The killing blow came after a particularly vicious series of traps. One had released a cloud of gas of quite displeasing smell, but it wasn't really hard to block it out. Another had caused a slight ringing in his ears, thus limiting his sense of hearing, and his eye was locked on his weapon-wielding students. Suddenly, they both lowered their stances, slightly confusing Kakashi, until he saw Sakura sprinting to stand at their side, with both bells in her hand. Kakashi stood there, shocked, for a minute, before getting a hold of himself. Well, I am impressed. Most teams would have chosen the easy way and simply attacked together, but you decided to go for the hard way and actually try to get the bells. I am very impressed. So are we, said Naruto. You're a real badass, and you weren't even at 25%. What are you talking about, Naruto? Asked a surprised Sakura. He is said to be almost cage level. Do you really think that 3 students out of the academy, no matter how good, could land even a single hit on a serious cage? Sakura's eyes grew the size of saucers as she looked at Kakashi. Sasuke, hearing this, looked thoroughly pleased, probably because he had a really strong teacher. Anyway, said Kakashi, I have quite a good idea of both Naruto and Sasuke's specialties and capacities, so I'll have to test you, Sakura, and see where you can improve. We'll probably spend the next weeks bringing you up to par. Then, he turned his gaze to the 2 boys. I expect you 2 to keep working. I'll give you a voucher to allow you to borrow some scrolls at the Jutsu library. You both know your elemental affinities. Both nodded and Kakashi handed them a piece of paper with an eye smile. Good. I trust you to avoid going overboard. Naruto and Sasuke departed and made their way toward the Jutsu library. At the founding of the village, most of the population was made from clans such as the Uchiha, Hyuga, or Kurama, so a good deal of the most important institutions in the village had been entrusted to clans, both to ensure they were functioning and to show trust towards the clans. For instance, the Uchiha had been given the military police, the Hyuga were in charge of the relations with the fire daimyo among other tasks. The keeping of the Jutsu library had befallen the Senju, but since there officially was only one Senju left, the staff was composed of families with ties with the Senju. The library was a tall building, heavily reinforced to resist possible attacks and capable of locking onto itself until the danger had passed, making it one of the entrance points to the shelters. They walked inside and went to the reception. The man at the reception looked up, and smiled brightly at Sasuke when he read the note, but he saw Naruto just as he opened his mouth. His expression immediately turned sour. I am sorry, but we do not allow the likes of him in our respectable institution. Sasuke rose an eyebrow and prepared to question the decision, not out of the kindness of his heart, but because he felt insulted by association, but Naruto put a hand on his shoulder and shook his head once Sasuke looked at him. Go find your scrolls, I'll come in soon. Could you just gimme the paper? Sasuke shrugged and gave him the paper without a care and went inside the library. The man behind the reception desk had an incredibly smug smirk on his face. Good. Now leave the building, boy. Naruto looked at him, gave a cheesy grin, and then formed a cross with his fingers. In a puff of smoke, a clone appeared and left the building. Done, and now we'll nicely wait for Hokage-sama to come here. All smugness left the man's face, quickly replaced by fear, as he tried to usher Naruto inside and get him to recall his clone, but the blonde wouldn't budge, and soon the receptionist was bordering on hysteria. A Jonin seeing this came closer to investigate. What's happening here? Naruto turned to him and gave a civil, if a bit sinister, smile. It happens that this guy doesn't think the local Jinchuriki is allowed in the Jutsu library despite written orders from Hitaki Kakashi-sensei. The Jonin took a second to digest the information. Can you show me these orders? Naruto made a clone and had the clone hand its copy of the note, causing the Jonin to quirk an eyebrow, both at the technique used and at the mistrustful behavior. Not the original. Do I look stupid? Said Naruto, causing the Jonin to look at him quizzically. Enough people have tried to screw me over, I'm not trusting of strangers. The Jonin read the note, handed it back to the clone, and leaned against the reception desk. So kid, what kind of reparation are you gonna ask? Dunno. Why? Well, that guy is basically suspected of treason just for refusing entry to a ninja. That caused the receptionist to pale horribly. And while I doubt Ibiki and Anko will find any link to another village, the mention of the Leaf Two top interrogators made the man even paler, bordering on transparent. You will still be allowed to demand reparation for that, and since it's a grave offense, you could even demand to have his house and be granted your wish. I'll think about it. After all, I'll need some pocket money in the future. It was at this moment that the Hokage arrived, and he didn't look too pleased. Naruto, what is this matter your clone told me about? This guy decided I wasn't welcome here and ignored written orders from Kakashi-sensei. Here's the note, said Naruto, handing the paper to Sarutobi. The Sandaime read the note, glared at the receptionist, and snapped his fingers. 4 Anbu appeared, kneeling in front of him. Take this man into custody, he is suspected of treason. Naruto, come to my office in 2 days, we will discuss the reparations you can ask. Okay old man, thanks. Sarutobi smiled, then shunshined back to his office as the Anbu shunshined with the frightened man to the detention area and left one of their own at the desk. The Jonin looked at this, clearly impressed. Damn kid, you've got big friends. Yup, but I have to if I wanna go far. Say, you're Jonin, huh? Yup. Think you could give me a hand? I'll be sure to remember you. Hey, already playing the game of favors. That's a bit early, don't you think? Maybe, but you, along with the whole village, will soon find out that I have enough power to do it. Now, I think you already know my name, but what's yours? Ikazuki Atsuo. What are you looking for? Atsuo was wearing the standard Konoha outfit, had short flat brown hair, a slightly angular face and a goatee. His gray eyes held curiosity and interest. Fuinjutsu. Advanced books. Fuinjutsu. Whistle man, that's a rare interest. You got lucky, that's one of mine too. Come, the Fuinjutsu part isn't really that big, but there are some good books. What's the last book you've read? Introduction to Advanced Fuinjutsu by Namikaze Minato. Woawavoa what the? You've read the Yondaime's book? Yup. Couldn't find Senju Mito's books though, are they in there? Well, yeah, but I personally failed to even begin to understand Yondaime-sama's book, so I won't be able to help you on that. Not a problem, just showing me where to go will be a huge help. Well, it's here. Say, how hard was it for you to understand Yondaime-sama's work? Fairly difficult. I had trouble following his train of thought and his explanations seemed a bit, well, I don't mean to insult his skills, but he didn't sound like he completely understood what he was trying to explain. Are you telling me you think you're better than Yondaime-sama? No, I'm telling you he could have written more clearly. Besides, he wrote that book early in his career, and some time after he did, his skills in Fuinjutsu grew by leaps and bounds, so he either found a new and excessively good teacher, or he made a breakthrough of epic proportions. But yes, on the theory, I think I'm currently better than he was when he wrote that book. Then there's the practical side, I'm still working on that one. Okay, so you're just better than most jonin at one of the most difficult fields of the ninja arts. Let's say it's in my blood. Say, you got experience, right? I made a few seals, think you could look them over. 2 days later, Naruto asked for the receptionist's house and, ironically, offered to rent him his own house. The man had no choice but to accept. 2 months passed. Team 7 was slowly progressing, mostly because Sakura was trying to catch up, something she was doing with surprising gusto and determination. Naruto had found in Atsuo a teacher and kindred spirit, and when they began talking Fuinjutsu, they were often at it for hours. Together, they imagined new seals never seen before and worked to make them real. It was slow, but there were progresses made. Very soon, Naruto was introduced to Atsuo's neighbor, an orphan girl by the name of Tenten that was crazed enough to build her own forge on the roof of her apartment building. The interesting thing was that the forge worked perfectly and she produced some of the finest weapons of the leaf, even if she didn't know that. She also held an interest in Fuinjutsu, and soon the three began spending entire days talking about possible seals and their applications. As a sign of friendship, Tenten reforged the blades of Naruto's staff and gave him some of her kunai and shuriken. Today was a day off for the entire village since the clans would be busy for the whole day. Today was one of the biannual clan gatherings where they discussed how their lands were doing. All of the major ninja clans of the village had noble status and had large properties spread throughout Fire Country, and while the minor clans also had properties, they weren't as big. Twice a year, the members of the clan taking care of the lands would come to Konoha to give their report on both the economic situation of the lands under their care and the troops trained on their lands. Konoha in itself was too small to hold Fire Country's full military power, at least if they wanted to count, so the clans trained ninja on their lands in an effort to bolster the ranks. While the ninja trained out of the village weren't as good as those trained in the village, and rarely went beyond Chunin, they were an important part of Konoha's military power. Today was important because the heirs of most of the clans would be introduced to the marvels of land owning and managing. While it may look like a hassle, it was actually of the utmost importance. The main reason the daimyo gave such leeway to Konoha was because the ninja clans were an important part of the economy of Fire Country. For instance, the Aburame held a complete monopoly over the production of silk, and theirs was the finest in the elemental nations, something that brought great pride and incomes to their clan. The Nara owned the majority of the medicine industry, while the Hyuga owned the lands producing the finest sake. The Kurama held most of the opium farms in the country. The Inuzuka had a firm grip on the vast majority of the animal-related businesses. The Akamichi owned some of the most productive mines of the country, working with the Yamanaka when it came to gems, letting the mind readers and their jewelers craft the most exquisite of jewels. The Uchiha owned some of the best forges in the world, and the weapons made there brought a great deal of income and pride to their clan, and even if they were slaughtered to the last, their fame remained. The Senju, or what was left of them, owned entire forests of otherwise rare trees. All in all, Fire Country couldn't work without the ninja clans and their power. Naruto on his part was patiently waiting in a conference room in the Gauntlet. Danzo had told him to come here, and he had a good idea of what was waiting for him. A few years back, he had seen on Danzo's desk a poorly hidden file, so poorly hidden he was sure Danzo wanted him to see it. The file was named Whirlpool Resurrection. The door opened, and in walked Danzo, followed by a samurai wearing a black attire with a dark blue armor suite with the Uzumaki swirl on each pauldrons on top and surprisingly a leaf headband. He had gray hair kept in a low ponytail, black eyes, a scar running across his left cheek and a thick mustache. He looked impassive, and just the way he held himself screamed of a veteran. Next came a jovial-looking man, in his late 20s, with spiking bright blue, almost white hair, hazel eyes sparkling with optimism, and a constant smile on his face. He wore Konoha's flak jacket and his Konoha headband on his right arm, sewn into the sleeve of his black shirt, and black pants and sandals. A piece of cloth reaching his mid-calves fell from the back of his belt and seemed to bear the Uzumaki swirl on at least the inside. Third came a woman, probably in her 40s, her black hair kept in a high ponytail reaching the small of her back. She had black eyes and beautiful features. She wore a light blue kimono with dark blue border that hugged her features, showing just how much of a woman she was. She probably gave a heart attack to a lot of old geezers with this kind of figure. Interestingly, her dark blue obi bore a plate bearing the leaf symbol. Glancing at her slightly ample sleeves, he caught sight of a handle behind the clipboard she held, causing him to tense slightly. The woman seeing this gave him an appreciative smile, as if satisfied to see she wouldn't work with an incompetent boy. Fourth came a bulky man that looked anything but at ease and looked like he expected the ground to move. If the bunch of swear words he kept muttering was anything to go by, he was a sailor. He was tall, around 6 feet 6, had dark brown hair falling to his broad shoulders, kept out of his forehead by a cloth headband that had probably once been white, hardened blue eyes, a scar running across his surprisingly still working right eye and a bushy black beard. This giant of a man was the only one not to have a leaf headband, but the massive sword on his back showed that he too wasn't to be messed with. He wore a massive green gi as a jacket, the sleeves looking like they had been ripped off, possibly by his arms considering the size of his muscles, matching gi pants, and wooden geta. The sword itself looked like it had once been part of an anchor before being ripped off, sharpened and put on a handle. Danzo sat next to Naruto, and the four took their seats on the other side of the table. The giant looked at Naruto, unimpressed, while the others bowed their heads politely. "Old man, you're telling me we'll take orders from that shrimp? Are you sure you want to judge me on my size instead of my brain?" That stopped the three others from scolding the sailor. HMPH, just 'cause your grandfather was daimyo doesn't mean you have what it takes to lead Whirlpool. And that's why you're here, to help me learn and advise me. Though if you don't feel up to the task, I can always find someone else. The man glared at Naruto while the blonde calmly held his gaze, not giving an inch. Finally, the giant relaxed and let out a boisterous laugh. "All right, lad, you got balls, that's good. You may be blonde but you're Uzumaki all right." The name's Sufuku Daijiro, recently appointed leader of Whirlpool's fleet. "May it be for war or trade, I got the ship for it. You can find me in Kiri's bingo book. They nicknamed me Blood Wave after I sunk a quarter of their fleet. They attacked the wrong guy. My pa was Whirlpool's last admiral. Well, it is a pleasure to meet you, Daijiro-san. Hopefully we can grab a drink together when I'm of age and finally able to go to Whirlpool." "Ha, count me in. All right, old man, your turn," he said, elbowing slightly the samurai next to him, causing the man to let out a gruff sigh. "Uzumaki-sama, I am Musashi Masahiro, commander of Whirlpool's samurai forces. I know you are a ninja and as such probably don't think much of a samurai, but I assure you that my troops can give a run for their money to a lot of ninja. Masahiro-san, I do not think less of you because you are a samurai. It would be not only stupid but also insulting towards you and your troops. I may be your leader, but it doesn't mean I can disrespect you." Masahiro by now was literally beaming with pride, delighted that his new leader was thinking in such a way. "Those are exactly the words of your grandfather. I am proud to once again serve an Uzumaki. I was part of Whirlpool's forces before the fall of the village. Rest assured, my lord, that all that your clan taught us will be passed unto the next generation. I am pleased to know this, Masahiro-san. I may require your tutoring later on. I wish to know all that my clan left behind, even if it isn't part of the ninja arts. It will be my pleasure to teach you, Naruto-sama." Naruto smiled. He could see now that he had gained the loyalty of the old samurai for more than just his family name. Next, he turned to the woman. "My lord, I am Okami Keiko, clan head of the Okami clan and appointed to manage Uzu's economy. It is an honor to serve you." Okami, Okami, that name sounds familiar. If I remember correctly, your clan was originated from Earth Country. Our lands there have been destroyed after the container of the Five Tails attacked. Apparently, he considered we were on his territory and didn't want any human near him. We had to flee, and since Iwa didn't help us, we decided to leave Earth Country altogether. Danzo-sama offered us asylum on your lands under the condition that we help, something we have strived to do. I see. I hope you didn't lose too many people during the attack. No, Han-san was more interested in making us leave. My father-in-law, my predecessor as clan head, negotiated our flight in the middle of a battle. It left him crippled but alive, and Han-san allowed us to leave despite being able to kill us. I see. You have my condolences for your husband. Kiko's eyebrows shot up, in surprise. Your condolences? Azumo-kun is just fine. Why do you think he is dead? Well, you said your father-in-law was the last clan head. Oh, I see. We Okami work a bit differently. The clan head is the most competent leader in the clan, it's not a hereditary title. Oh, I see. Well, I am happy to hear this. I am a bit curious about your clan. Hopefully I will be able to learn more when I visit Whirlpool. Keiko nodded, a smile on her face. Lastly, the ninja straightened up a bit. Well, my lord, I am Suiho Kento, current leader of the Whirlpool Ninja Forces. We're trying to go back to the old days where Fuinjutsu was our main specialty, but it's a bit hard. A lot of knowledge was lost during Uzushio's fall. So we kinda compensate with the rest. We are for now at 500 shinobi, most of them low chunin level, but we're working on it. We concentrate mostly on defensive techniques and we have a respectable pool of med nin. Good, and don't worry about Fuinjutsu, I'm working on it. I found a few partners to trade ideas with and we're making good progress. How is Whirlpool's academy doing? Well, quite good. We got quite a few students eager to be part of the corp, but since the population of the island isn't back to what it was, we'll need more time to be fully functioning. It's not a problem, we have time. Are you making common exercises to work with the samurai? Yup, sir. Once a week. Good. How long will you stay? I'd like a little sparring match if it's okay with you. Ha, we can do that just after the meeting if you want, sir. Sounds good. I hope you're happy. Not many get the occasion to kick their bosses. Kento laughed at the joke, clearly happy to have a cool boss. I'm gonna like working with you, boss. You're a cool guy. Well, thanks. Now, let's get down to business. It may take some time, but I want to know exactly how my people are doing. The meeting lasted most of the day, a lot was discussed, and Naruto further impressed his advisors. When they left the village after the sparring match with Kento, they were all happy with their new leader, and Daijiro was loudly boasting that he had the best boss around. Danzo, who had stayed with him all along, was impressed. You did exceptionally well. I prepared. Besides, a leader is there to serve the people, not the other way around, so I gotta get into the mindset. Danzo nodded, pleased with his charge. How is Kitsune doing? Not much left, most of the merging is done. Well, if you'll excuse me, gotta go grab some shut-eye, it was a tiring day. Danzo nodded, letting the youth return to his home. 3 long months since graduation, 3 months of D ranks and Sakura being trained into the ground to catch up. It had taken a month just to convince her to stop dieting, but, after that, she had made fairly good progress. She had begun as a weak genin and already was at high genin level with a fairly good level in genjutsu and was studying medical ninjutsu, something that would be a boon in future missions. She was already competent enough to close open wounds and was beginning to study how to repair organs. But while training progressed well, they had grown tired of the D ranks, especially those where they had to chase that damned cat. Since they all shared this feeling, they agreed to ask for AC rank at their next stop at the mission office. And it was just this morning. Sensei, could we have a word before going in? Asked Naruto. Kakashi, pulling his nose out of his orange book, looked at him curiously, gesturing for him to continue. We are tired of the D ranks, sensei, said Sakura. We think AC rank would be beneficial. D ranks are no challenges. AC rank might show us how much we've progressed. Kakashi thought about it for a moment, then nodded before proceeding into the office. Hello, I would like to acquire AC rank for my team, said Kakashi to the Chunin, handing the missions. The man looked through the list he had. Ah, we have something for you. It's a simple escort mission. You will accompany a bridge builder back to his country and protect him while he finishes his work. Hokage-sama mentioned that your team specifically would be best suited. The Chunin sent a look to Kakashi that clearly said, there's something fishy. Be on your guard. Kakashi nodded and took the mission. The man gave them the address of the hotel where Tazuna resided and the team went there. They quickly reached their destination, a low-cost hotel situated in one of the most rundown parts of the town. Damn, the guy must have put all his money in the mission. Even my apartment is better than that. This caused both Sasuke and Sakura to look at him questioningly, but he ignored them. Kakashi got the number of the room at the reception and led them to it. Once they reached the door, he knocked. Who's there? I am Hatake Kakashi, Jonin of Konoha. I am here for the mission. T's open. Kakashi opened the door and stepped inside to see a room that actually managed to look worse than the rest of the hotel. Sprawled on the bed was a man in his late 50s to mid-60s, with seriously graying hair. He looked absolutely pathetic and the stench of alcohol was sickening. He looked at them with slightly glazed eyes, and disbelief soon made its way to his face. Z's a joke. A bunch of kids. He slurred. Tell me it's a joke. No way these kids are ninja. Don't worry, my team may be young, but they are competent. Now, may we know your name? I'm Tazuna, the super bridge builder. Very well, when do you want to leave? When you ready. Uhu. I think we will wait after lunch to depart, if you don't see any objection. My team need to pack and you need to rest. I'm good, got all the rest I needed. Naruto, having enough of this, let out a burst of killing intent, causing Sakura to jump in fear and surprise and Tazuna to sober up at very high speed. You back, old man. Good. Now, we're leaving after lunch, so you better look through your shit to make sure you didn't forgot a thing and sober up a bit more. Oh, and take a shower. My nose is a bit sensitive and I don't want to travel with a guy that stinks. It would be much appreciated if you didn't drink your off before we leave. You should know that clients acting too disrespectfully can be blacklisted. Wouldn't it be sad if your whole country was blacklisted because of you? You wouldn't want that, right? Good. Now prepare your pack, take a good shower, and have a nice lunch away from sake. We'll see you at the gate. Is 2 o'clock good, sensei? Okay. We'll see you at 2 o'clock at the west gate. See ya. Naruto walked to the window, opened it, and simply jumped out. Sasuke grunted and followed the same way, finding the blonde's escape way to be an excellent one since it allowed him to escape the stench. Tazuna, still shaking a bit, turned to Kakashi. What the hell was that? Killing intent, some sort of murderous aura. And he is, always like that. Nope. Usually he is nicer. I guess you just got on his nerves. But as you can see, my team is indeed competent. Now, if you will excuse me, I must prepare for the mission. Tazuna was left with an equally shaken Sakura. The old bridge builder turned to the young Pinkett. Are you the only normal person on this team? The team gathered at the western gate at the appointed hour. Everyone did a double take when they saw Naruto's attire. Gone was the orange jacket tied around his waist. He stood in black pants with black sandals, a dark red sleeveless t-shirt, and a sleeveless hooded black coat falling to his mid-calves. Now that his arms were visible, all could see that he wasn't as scrawny as he was believed to be. Quite the contrary. His staff was separated in two, each part having a foot and a half of handle and a foot-long blade, and each blade resting in one of the sheaths crossed on his back. Then came a running and slightly fearful Tazuna. Sorry. Pant, I had to pay for my room. Pant, it took longer than I thought. I'm not too late, am I? He asked apprehensively. No, you're just on time, answered a smiling Naruto, slightly creeping out Tazuna. So sensei, do we set out? Kakashi nodded and they began their trek. The first 2 days of travel were utterly uneventful. Sakura, being curious, asked Tazuna why he had hired ninja. The reason was that a business tycoon, Gato, was submitting Wave to his despotic reign, his bridge being the only hope to break his hold on the country. He gave a quite vivid description of the situation in Wave. How poor they were, how people were thrown to the streets, and how children were forced to scavenge for food. Considering just how dangerous Tazuna was to Gato's reign, he expected him to send his mercenaries to kill him off, hence why he needed ninja protection. Tazuna-san, you do realize Gato'll just have to seize the bridge, right? Noted Naruto. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm building a secret passage inside the bridge. That way we'll be able to discreetly pass mercenaries into our country to overthrow Gato. Not a bad idea. But what is stopping them from taking control of the country? The daimyo's forces. He's not doing shit because Gato didn't try to take his place. But if the mercenaries do turn against us, the daimyo will be forced to react. Maybe, said Naruto, a plan beginning to form in his head. At this instant, stone spears flew from the woods. Naruto went to the right, unsheathing his blades and deflecting the spears masterfully, while Sasuke did the same on the left with his Chikudo. Kakashi immediately had a kunai in each hand, and Sakura, on reflexes alone, took a defensive position near Tazuna. From the undergrowth, 3 shinobi emerged, all of them with slashed Iwa headbands. Well, what do we have here? Poor Lil. Tree huggers are protecting our target. Be nice, hand him over, and we'll let you live. Naruto, who had brought the hood on his hair, looked carefully at each of the Iwa deserters. One was facing him, another was in front of Sasuke, and the last was directly in front of Kakashi. Sensei, they're pages 359, 360 and 361 of the Bingo book. Iwagawa Kosuke, Noda, and Setsuo. Hey, heard that brothers. We're famous. Even Konoha Genin know our names. You're the weakest missing nin to ever leave Iwa. You are so weak that the bounty for your heads is placed at half the standard bounty for rogue chunin, making it the lowest bounty in the history of the elemental nations. Rumor has it that Onoki is even considering removing the bounty altogether since you're so weak. Answered Naruto with a smirk, thoroughly incensing the 3 missing nin. Since they were so angry, they charged right in, intent on showing the genin how strong they were. Sasuke dashed forward and cleanly bisected his enemy before spinning on his heels and cutting off both his arms to ensure he wasn't a danger anymore. Naruto ducked under a kunai strike before cutting the man's arms at the elbow. He then slammed his knee in the man's groin, causing him to fall forward with a grunt of pain and opening him for a hit at the base of his neck, knocking him out. Kakashi simply disappeared and reappeared behind his enemy and chopped him in the neck, causing him to fall unconscious. Then, he turned to his blonde student. Naruto, why did you assume I didn't know who they were? I assumed you did, I simply didn't see any other way to exploit their weakness. It's said in the Bingo book that they are easily angered, especially when you question their worth, and that their competence drops when angry, so I found a way to take advantage of that. Good thinking. Praised Kakashi with an eye smile. And Sasuke, good job. You handled him very well. Kakashi then turned towards his last student and was only mildly surprised to see Sakura breathing hard and looking at the blood and guts of Sasuke's opponent. She was shivering, small whimpers escaped her. Naruto, Sasuke, try and interrogate the 2 survivors. I have to talk to Sakura. With that, He gently pushed the pinkett towards the wood to have a talk with her. Naruto took his prisoner, bandaged his arms just enough to stop the bleeding, and looked over his shoulder. To his surprise, the old man didn't seem all that fazed by the sight of blood. Ill at ease, yes, but not in shock. Turning back to his prisoner, he tied him to a tree and passed smelling salts under his nose, causing him to wake up, though groggily, probably because of blood loss. Hello, Kosuke. I have quite a few questions. Screw you. No thanks, I'm not swinging that way. Naruto took a scroll from inside his coat and unrolled it where Kosuke could see it. From it, he unsealed an array of pointy things. Just looking at the assortment of things, Kosuke felt phantom pain begin to appear throughout his body, but he stood strong. Naruto then took a small piece of paper, showed him the seal on it, and placed it on his forehead before activating it. Kosuke felt a strange tingle go through him, and he was surprised to feel his clothes against his skin with such intensity. Everything seemed more intense. Now, as you may have noticed, your sense of touch has been heightened. Nearly 100-fold. Naruto then took a spoon. Kosuke hadn't seen it because he was concentrated on all the menacing tools. Naruto showed him the spoon clearly, both sides, before bringing it down on his shoulder, almost like a playful hit. But you wouldn't have guessed, given the scream of pure anguish and pain that escaped Kosuke's lips. What the hell? Naruto didn't answer. He instead took a strange apparatus with vicious-looking hooks and held it in front of Kosuke's eyes. The handle seemed a bit large, and there was a button on the shaft that had the hooks. Naruto pressed the button and small arcs of lightning began coursing on the hooks. The feet are one of the body parts with the most neural terminuses, did you know that? There's also the tongue. But since you obviously can't write anymore, you'll need to talk. Oh, and did you know that there's a point in pain where you suffer so much that you can't even fall unconscious? That did it for Kosuke. If a single spoon could cause that much pain, he didn't want to know what that thing would feel like, especially not if he knew he couldn't escape it. He blurted out everything, how Gato had hired them to kill Tazuna, the exact emplacement of Gato's fortress, his ties with the daimyo, the number of his goons, even the emplacement of the pirate bases working for him. And Naruto, of course, took note of everything on a little notepad. When Kakashi came back with a slightly better Sakura, he saw a whimpering mess near Naruto and Sasuke trying and quite failing at extracting information from Setsuo. It seemed Sasuke's torture methods weren't his bright point. Alright Sasuke, enough, I'll handle him. The Uchiha backed off grumbling and the slightly sweating Iwagawa smirked. Kakashi then turned to Naruto and sighed. Naruto, I asked you to interrogate him, not break him. But I interrogated him, he sang like a bird. Here are my notes. Kakashi looked at the notebook and his eye widened. Naruto, how did you do that? A tag, a spoon, and some intimidation. Naruto, never speak of this around anyone with contacts in T&I. Why? Because if you do, Ibiki will pester me until I give you to him. Meh, fair enough. So, we go on. These guys were weak as hell and their boss isn't particularly stronger. Kakashi thought about it for a moment before nodding. Alright, behead them. I'll seal their heads, their bounty will add to the mission pay. Kosuke almost welcomed death, but not Setsuo. Far from that, you tree huggers. You'll all die. You can't stand against Gato's army. You'll all die, and I'll piss on you from up there. Sasuke, having had enough, beheaded the man in one swift slash of his Chikudo. Kakashi quickly sealed the heads and they resumed their trek. Along the way, Sasuke kept sending dirty looks to Naruto, pissed that the Dobi, the dead last, was once again besting him. It was infuriating. He was supposed to get stronger to avenge his clan, yet that guy, who didn't seem to have an ounce of hatred in him, was getting stronger than he was. It wasn't fair. With a growl, he returned his gaze to the road in front of him. The team was walking down one of the many foggy paths of Wave Country. They had recently landed after taking a small boat to cross the sea. It had taken nearly an hour at full speed to go to Wave. And, on the end of the journey, they had to cut the engines and road, all for the sake of being discreet. While they walked, they didn't notice the pair of eyes looking at them hatefully, nor did they notice their owner gathering his chakra. Suddenly, a spear of stone shot from under Tazuna, impaling him completely. What? Screamed Kakashi. 3 kunai shot from the trees, slamming into each of the genins' heads, while a hand coated in a blade of rock shot through Kakashi's torso. Ha! So much for the almighty Hatake Kakashi! Screamed Kuromoto Batu, rogue jonin from Iwa. I knew you leaf scum were just weaklings. Kakashi, blood pouring from his mouth and soaking his mask, turned his head to face him, and I smiled. Puff! What? Kakashi appeared behind him, swinging his hand coated in lightning in an arc and cleanly beheading him. Kakashi then took a handkerchief from the deceased Jonin's pouch and used it to clean his hand. It's okay, guys. He's dead. The genin and Tazuna joined Kakashi near the new corpse, Sakura looking away while Kakashi collected the head and Naruto drew a cross on a portrait in a black book. Well, that guy is worth quite a lot, mostly because of his crimes. This mission is becoming more and more profitable. Do you only think about money, Naruto? No, I also think of 2 beautiful and foxy twins I wish existed outside of my imagination. Hey, I'm a ninja. If you want a benevolent and chaste guy, go see a monk. You disgust me. I can live with that. So, Tazuna-san, where's your house? I got a few things I'd like to talk about with ya, but I don't feel like doing it in public. Tazuna began to lead them down the path and they quickly reached his house. The door opened and a woman burst out of the house, running toward Tazuna. Father, you are okay, I am so relieved. There were rumors about Gato hiring ninja to assassinate you. They were true, but these ninja were even better. Gato will have to find new goons. Ninja-san, this is my daughter, Tsunami. The Konoha team bowed politely at Tsunami and introduced themselves. Since it was beginning to be a bit late, Tsunami went to prepare dinner while Tazuna showed them their rooms. Kakashi and Sakura each got one for themselves while Sasuke and Naruto had to share the last room. Of course, Naruto didn't really want to share a room with Sasuke, so. Say Sakura, how about we trade rooms? What? In my privacy? That would be the perfect occasion to entice Sasuke with your body and show him you're better than Ino. Deal. Sasuke sent a death glare to Naruto, Kakashi looked bemused at the scene, and Naruto calmly went to settle down in his new room, laughing to himself about how easy to play Sakura was. After he finished setting his stuff down, including a complete bedding, he went to the kitchen and helped Tsunami. At the diner table, everything seemed fine, even though the kid seemed a bit broody. After dinner was finished, Naruto decided it was time to begin phase 1 of his plan. Tazuna-san, may we talk in private? The bridge builder nodded and led Naruto to his room so they could talk. Once there, he sat on his futon and faced Naruto. So, what do you want to talk about? What if I had a way to rid you of Gato and the daimyo at the same time? I'm listening. For a reasonable sum, I can call for the forces on my lands, just north of here, in Whirlpool, and I can stage your very own coup d'etat. After that, you can proclaim yourself daimyo of Wave and use the country's treasury to pay for both the use of my troops and the mission, which by now has probably been updated to A rank at least since there was a Jonin. Besides, you'll be able to fund the completion of the bridge. So, what do you say? How long for your troops to come? Looks like that seal I designed will be useful, said Naruto with a smile. 2 weeks before the mission, he had designed a seal to send messages across long distances. It was far less efficient than radio wave and was still experimental, but it served its purpose. Fishing inside of his coat, he took a scroll out. How could you hide that in this coat? It's big enough to be noticed. The marvels of Fuinjutsu. Unrolling the scroll, he began pulsing his chakra into the seal, sending a mental message along. In the officer quarter of the main Whirlpool Fortress, a message appeared on the corresponding scroll. All right, my troops should arrive in, 5 to 7 days. Tazuna nodded, accepting the delay easily. You promise you won't take over the country? That would be extremely bad for my image, so yeah, I promise not to take over Wave Country, well, unless you ask me to. Answered Naruto with a grin. 4 days had passed. It was early morning and Naruto was sitting on the roof, looking over the rising sun. Sakura was still sleeping, exhausted after yesterday's training. Kakashi was keeping the pressure up and she was now working on waterwalking. But with her quite small reserves, even if they were growing, she was easily exhausted, something Sasuke was grateful for. Otherwise she would have raped him already. The boy, Inari, had been annoying lately with his gloomy behavior. Last night he had sprouted nonsense about Gato being too strong or whatever. Naruto had proceeded to ignore him completely and, in the end, it was Sasuke who snapped when the boy said they didn't know what it was to have a hard life. Inari didn't know it, but he was lucky to still be in one piece. Behind him, he heard the door to the balcony of Inari's room open. He could feel the little boy's glare on his back and this time decided to talk to the boy. What is it, Inari? The boy remained silent, keeping the glare up. With sigh, Naruto turned and looked at him. You're upset about what Sasuke said last night, huh? Well, you just picked the worst person possible to say that. What does he know? He doesn't know what it's like to suffer, to lose some. He lost his whole clan. That shut Inari up. His own brother slaughtered his whole family, not only his mother and father, but also his cousins, uncles, aunts, everyone. He lost 800 people in one night. I don't know who you lost, but I doubt it's that much. You know, your statement was only true for Sakura. Who did you lose? Asked the little boy quietly. Naruto chuckled humorlessly. My parents, on the day of my birth. Well, my leader showed me a woman and said she was my mother, but she's in a coma with no way of waking up, so I have no idea if she's really my mother. I grew up alone, no love, no family, and no friends. It only changed in the last months. Now the boy was properly humbled. He was looking down in shame at his words. He was about to ask a question when the water near the house began to move unnaturally, causing Naruto to turn to look. Reaching discreetly for a kunai, he hid himself on the roof while Inari went to wake Kakashi up. The water began to rise and, from the depth, emerged an octopus with the symbol of whirlpool appearing on his skin like a tattoo. Kakashi suddenly appeared behind Naruto, looking at the summon cautiously. Naruto, since when do you have summons? Not mine, but friendly. Answered Naruto. Uzumaki-sama, spoke the octopus in a grave voice. Daijiro-sama gave me a message for you. Naruto jumped down on the walkway and made his way to the summon, taking the sealed container it offered him, then the summon disappeared in the depth. Naruto opened the container and took the scroll before unrolling it and looking over its content. Tazuna cautiously opened the door behind them, peering through the crack, having been woken up by his grandson. Seeing it was safe, he exited and approached the widely smiling Naruto, seeing the scroll. What does it say, kid? That my friends made it here faster than expected. They'll be at a beach north of here in 2 hours. Naruto, who? You'll see, sensei. You'll see. Naruto. It's not interfering with our mission. Or, at least, not in a bad way, so I don't think I have to tell you, do I? Kakashi remained silent, looking intently at his most interesting yet annoying student. Naruto, you are bordering on insubordination. Okay. No need to use the big words. Let's step inside and I'll explain everything. 2 hours later, the whole Team 7 and Tazuna were at a beach, a bit to the north. Naruto was looking with pride at the display while the other looked gobsmacked at the dozen or so ships, all bearing the crest of Whirlpool. There were 2 Akatebune and 8 or so Fun. Additionally, there was a half-dozen damaged ships bearing pirate symbols. Entire squads of shinobi and samurai were jumping from the Whirlpool ships, using water walking to reach the beach. In full armor, Musashi Masahiro went to Naruto, a smile on his face, and bowed low once he reached him. Naruto-sama, Whirlpool's forces are at your service. I have here 150 samurai and 75 shinobi. Considering the mission, Kento sent our more fight-oriented shinobi under the command of Okami Izumo. Good. Very good. I didn't expect you for at least one more day. Don't underestimate me, lad. Bellowed Daijiro from atop a gigantic octopus. He jumped and landed incredibly nimbly for someone of his size. Sorry. We had a lil date with the pirates. These idiots had never seen a warship. Heard you got a map for me. Yes. Here are the locations of all the pirate harbors. Clean up this mess. The loot. Half to Whirlpool's treasury, the rest is spread between the crews. Aye, sir. Say boss, how about we get that drink once you're finished with that coup? Sure. Daijiro. Sure. Alright. Take care of him, Masahiro. Will do, brat. Daijiro jumped back onto his summon, and led his fleet to the sea to attack the pirate bases. The soldiers of Whirlpool gathered by type and unit, the shinobi organizing themselves by squads of 5 while the samurai gathered by squads of 10. From the shinobi side, a man approached. He was in his 40s, had black spiky hair, black eyes and a goatee. He wore the Konoha standard uniform under a long gray haori falling to his mid-calves with the crest of Whirlpool on each of his shoulders, metal guards on his forearms, and his headband on his forehead. Uzumaki-sama, I am Okami Izumo. Ah, Keiko-san's husband. A pleasure to meet you. Likewise, my lord. May we know where our targets are? Yes, of course. Tazuna-san, do you have the map I requested? Yeah, here it is. Naruto began to unroll the map and mark the different objectives along with the enemy presence. Naruto, I do not mean to disrespect your troops, but do you really think 150 samurai will be able to fight Gado's troops? That sounds like a suicide mission to me. Watch what you say, brat. Bellowed an incensed Masahiro. My boys can beat a Chunin anytime. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at what he thought to be a boast. Well, sensei, maybe we should accompany the assault on Gado's main base. That way, you'll be reassured. Kakashi nodded his agreement and Naruto sent a smile to Masahiro. The generals of Whirlpool then began barking orders, attributing squads to each destination. The daimyo's palace would be seized by 4 shinobi squads before 3 squads of samurai moved in to secure and hold the place, then the 4 squads would move on to Gado's caserns inside the capital. His hold on the main port would be broken by 2 squads of shinobi, 5 squads of samurai would move to take control of the main villages of the small country, 4 more squads of shinobi would scour the countryside to eliminate outposts, and lastly 2 squads of samurai would take control of Gado's warehouses. The remaining 10 squads, 5 shinobi and 5 samurai, would lead an all-out assault on Gado's fortress along with Team 7. As soon as the order was given, the squads leapt into action. Kakashi was quite impressed to see the samurai easily keeping up with the ninja, even with him. Naruto, on his part, was quite delighted. Masahiro-san, after what you said I had quite high expectations for your troops, I am pleased to see such promising display. Thank you, my lord. In a matter of minutes, they reached a clearing near Gado's fortress. Masahiro sent archers in the trees to cover the assault before coming towards Naruto along with Izumo. My lord, we have a strategy that would be perfect for such a situation, said the aged samurai. I'm listening. Quite simple, said the wolf ninja. Masahiro lead the samurai to attack the front and distracts the mercenaries while we infiltrate from the rear and begin attacking from there. Naruto thought about it for a moment, then nodded. Nice strategy. Simple, but it will be effective against these lowlifes. Remember, don't damage the building too much and try to salvage as many valuables as possible. The commanders nodded and went to their troops. Masahiro took his squads to the front gate while Team 7 accompanied the ninja to attack the rear. Kakashi noticed absent-mindedly that a lot of the ninja had wolf-themed decorations, association them to the Okami clan. They reached a vantage point, hidden among the foliage, giving them a clear view of the front door. They saw the sentinels at the door screaming something, then the door exploded inward in a shower of splinters, with Masahiro and his 40 samurai charging in and taking position in the courtyard, spreading into an arc in front of the gate. Gato's mercenaries began to attack them and were mercilessly and effortlessly cut down. Those that used bows were taken out by arrows coming from the trees. Azumo signaled for the attack to begin and all the ninja flew from the trees, landing silently on the tiles of the fortified mansion. Kakashi took a few more moments to look at the samurai, and was completely stunned to see that they hadn't budged and that a small pile of corpses was beginning to form in front of the line of armored fighters. Azumo signaled for everyone to prepare. Sakura had requested to sit this one out and Kakashi had agreed to it. Looking at his other students, Kakashi saw Sasuke readying his Chikudo and Naruto unsheathing his twin blades before putting them together to form the bladed staff. Kakashi saw the Whirlpool ninja readying their weapons and noticed that they all had weapons of some kind. The flow of mercenaries had stopped. Seeing that they didn't risk to be flanked anymore, the ninja jumped into action. They landed silently and gracefully behind the wall of mercenaries and began to brutally attack them. Naruto jumped into the fray, decapitating 2 thugs in one slash of his blade. Still in the air, he spun on himself, bringing down his blade across the back of a bandit as he landed and completed his spin. Screams of panic began to fill the ranks as the ninja slaughtered the mercenaries silently. Spinning on his heels, Naruto cut 3 thugs in half at their midriff before blocking an axe destined to his head. Spinning his staff, he pushed the weapon up and slashed the man open with the second blade. Jumping back, he landed on the chest of another man whose head he removed as he fell before jumping lightly to keep him at head height and slashing wildly around him, slashing open 4 necks and 6 throats. 10 seconds, 18 dead. Jumping above a spear, he landed on the hilt and immediately began running along it, spinning his staff wildly as he went, killing 5 more bandits before reaching the owner of the spear and beheading him in one fluid move. 24. He dashed to the right, ducking under a strike from a nunchaku before driving his blade in the skull of the owner as he removed it. He used the momentum to open another goon from hip to shoulder with a spin of his staff. He then jumped over a sword strike and took the wielder's head. An idiot trying to look cool by using a war scythe tried to kill him. Naruto simply stepped back before swinging his staff and cutting the shaft. He then kicked the blade into the man's face while blocking a dagger from his left. Using the momentum of his right foot, he jumped up and slammed it into his opponent's windpipe, crushing it. Accompanying the falling corpse, he spun his staff around, slashing open 3 more throats. 32. The ranks of the opposition were thinned, no one remained near him and the last enemies were taken down. Masahiro came to him, a smile on his face. How many, my lord? 32. A victorious smile made its way to the general's face as he extended his hand toward one of his captains, palm upward. The captain, grumbling something about killing machines, placed a pile of ryo in Masahiro's hand to Naruto's amusement. You made a bet on my kill count. Yes, sir. I knew you would at least kill 30 of them, so I bet on it. Naruto nodded. All right, let's go get that Gato fellow. If I may. Sir. Said Azumo. It would be safer to let my clansmen search the complex and warn you once the target is located. Naruto thought about it, then nodded his consent. The shinobi began to spread throughout the complex, searching for traps and enemies. The rare resistance pockets were taken out quickly and quietly and Gato's office located. Naruto went to the office with Kakashi, Azumo, Masahiro and Sasuke. Kakashi approached the door and opened it suddenly, diving inside with a roll, a kunai in each hand ready to take out any threat. He was only greeted by a scream of fear from Gato. Who are you? Wait, you're a ninja. Get me out of here and I'll pay you a fortune. I'm afraid that's not possible. Interjected Naruto as he stepped inside. You've been trying to kill our client, so I doubt Sensei here would let you get away with it. Besides, my forces have been kind of hired to take you out. Gato looked at the blonde teen with horror written across his face. And no, I'll pay you. I'll pay you 5 times what they pay. 10 times. Not interested. There's more at stake than just money, there's also my reputation. The fire daimyo sure wouldn't appreciate if his most recent noble turned out to be easily corruptible, Without waiting for an answer, he slammed the flat of a blade against Gato's temple, knocking him out. Good, now that it's done, Azumo-san, could you please go fetch me Tazuna? Thank you. Now, where is the overly decorated throne room? Throne room. Why yes. This guy is short, meaning he has to compensate by showing off his money, so he must have some kind of overly decorated and cliché throne room. Naruto-sama, intervened a slightly uneasy Masahiro. There is no throne room. Oh, poop. Well, I guess I'll have to do with it. Let's go to the courtyard, the reports should be coming in soon. And indeed reports came from all the squads. The operation was a complete and utter success. The daimyo had been killed and all of those that were competent enough to replace him had resisted during the assault. Gato's casernes had been cleared, both in the capital and in the countryside, all mercenary outposts had been seized, looted and burnt to the ground. The main port was under control, along with the main population centers of the small nation. The warehouses had been seized and all illegal goods destroyed. The shinobi and samurai had already begun a wide swipe of the country to eliminate the remnants of Gato's forces. Leaders from the main towns and villages were being gathered at the daimyo's palace to discuss the current events. Tazuna arrived with Azumo via Shunshin and, when this all was announced to him, he looked positively lost. Sasuke was seeing Naruto in a new light. He had always considered him a loser. And even after he had realized that Naruto was Kitsune, he hadn't thought much of him. He may have been a good fighter, but he didn't have enough power to really make a difference. Or so he thought. Now that it was revealed that Naruto was not only a noble, but had a complete professional army at his disposal, he suddenly jumped up there, to the top of the threat ladder. He was a competitor, and a serious one, something that Sasuke didn't like one bit. Kakashi was looking at it all a little bit bemused. He honestly didn't expect that from one of his students. Usually, the forces trained in the clan fiefs didn't leave these lands unless a war occurred, may it be against another clan or another country. Most of them were militias of genin with a small cadre of chunin and jonin at their head, but Naruto had shown here that he had a fully trained samurai force more than willing to obey his every orders, a fleet of warships probably able to go toe-to-toe with Kiri, and at least one clan of shinobi ready to obey him. And he was ready and willing to call onto them. If that wasn't enough, his forces were visibly well trained, with samurai capable of keeping up with shinobi and a ninja force that seemed to count a good number of high chunin in their ranks. It was impressive, and it would definitely be mentioned in the report. The group shunshine to the daimyo's palace and Kakashi was honestly surprised to see the samurai general using the shunshin so casually, but he didn't show it. They stepped into the throne room and saw that the representatives of all the biggest villages and towns were there. Naruto stepped forward. Good morning everyone. I am Uzumaki Naruto, Lord of Whirlpool. Tazuna-san hired my forces to remove Gato and the former daimyo with him since they were working together. Well, it's done. As of today, 11 o'clock, 30 minutes ago, Gato has been arrested. Masahiro-san, did you bring him along? The samurai threw the little businessman, tied up, in the middle of the room. Good. As per my contract, I am instating Tazuna as daimyo of Wave and delivering Gato to you so you can judge him in any way you want. Now, as for my payment, if it does not upset you, I think I will pay myself with Gato's possessions. Is that all right? Everyone in the room nodded eagerly. Wonderful. As part of the contract, humanitarian aid will come to Wave around tomorrow. And, since Gato really does own a lot, or rather owns since it's mine now, I will include a few squads to patrol your islands and ensure peace remains. Is that all right with you? Once again, the council was eager to accept, making their agreement known quite vocally. Good. The legal content of the warehouses will be relinquished to Wave, along with your ports and the pirate ships captured. Excuse me, Uzumaki-sama, said one mayor with his hand raised. Did you say pirate ships? Why you destroyed the pirate blockade? Well, maybe not completely yet, but my fleet has a map of all the pirate hideouts under Gato's command and is busy destroying them. Now, Daimyo-sama, said Naruto, bowing to Tazuna, I will go back to my new mansion and set it up as a field HQ for the patrols. Have a good day. Naruto exited the room with a spring in his steps, along with the Konoha ninja and Whirlpool soldiers. 2 weeks since they had arrived, and the bridge was finished. A complete consensus had emerged from the people of Wave, and it was decided that the bridge would be called the Great Whirlpool Bridge, in honor of the warriors that saved them from slavery at Gato's hand. Entire ships of food had arrived from Whirlpool and the small island nation was beginning to rebuild what it had lost. Now, all the officials and a sizable portion of Wave's population were seeing the team off. Naruto was exchanging a few last words with the commander of the patrol forces in Wave, a woman named Minamoto Tomo. Finally, they set off to go back to the Leaf. Sasuke was as gruff as ever, even more so when it came to Naruto. Said blonde was clearly showing he didn't give a damn and smiled wickedly, and Sakura was back to worshipping the Uchiha with one or two wary glances to her other teammate. Kakashi, under the cover of reading his book, was thinking deep, trying to understand why exactly his student had this smile. Finally, curiosity consumed him. Naruto, what are you smiling about, if I may? Hey, Tazuna-san may be a good bridge builder, but he isn't a daimyo. He wasn't formed to be one. And it so happened that all those that could have advised or taught him resisted during the assault on the palace. He'll want out, sooner or later, and without anyone competent to take the post, Wave will want to become part of Fire Country, most probably to become part of a fief to benefit from the privileges. Now Kakashi understood, and they'll choose the fief that was so good to them, Whirlpool. Yup, thus allowing me to control a good half of the most used sea trade routes in the elemental nations. I will almost have a monopoly on the fire and hot water country's eastern coasts, and even a tad bit over Tide's northern coast. If Lightning wants products from Tide, they will have to have them pass through my lands and my fleet or pay a far bigger price when they go through at least 3 other countries to go around me. And, since Tide produces some of the finest and costliest medicinal herbs, they will have no choice but to stay in my good graces if they want to keep having their medicine fresh. As you can see, I will find myself in an excellent position to put pressure on Lightning, which means I will become a necessary ally for the Hyuga in the issue around the abduction of Hiyashi-sama's twin daughters, thus increasing my support base in Konoha. Silence settled on the squad. Sakura was stunned and wasn't sure to have understood everything. Sasuke was struggling to understand the geopolitical implications, a subject he hadn't really studied. Kakashi understood everything, and now perfectly realized that his blonde student was a political monster in the making, if only because of the power he would hold. Maybe I should negotiate with the Tide Daimyo to establish Whirlpool commercial outposts on his coast. That would extend the monopoly. I'll need to see how I could sway him in my favor. Mused Naruto out loud, further convincing his teammates that the blonde was in fact a dangerous and manipulative individual. From then on, the trip continued without a hitch. Kakashi returned to his reading, Sakura to her worshipping, Sasuke to his brooding, and Naruto to his dreams of world domination.